Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of HOPStart. Today we're in an interesting place, an interesting office and an interesting lab because today we're going to be interviewing the founder of Core Diagnostics. That's right, they do complex niche-based diagnostics for, well, the healthcare industry, and rather than me explain it to you since I'm no expert, let's just go ahead and talk to the founder.
I'm Zoya Brar. I'm the founder and CEO for Core Diagnostics.
Hi Zoya, thank you so much for taking out your time to let us interview you. So let's just start with what is Core Diagnostics?
So, today we are an organization that's number one, a high-end diagnostics lab. So a patient that needs testing for complex diseases, whether it is to decide what disease they have or then what do they do with that disease.
Okay.
That's one aspect. The second aspect is that we are now a data science company as well, because over the years I think we've collected a lot of data, and by default when you have that kind of data, the next step is to analyze it.
Okay.
So both of those things I think.
And I'm interested in, you said right now that you're especially complex diagnostics. So is that your niche or are you also just a general diagnostic?
No, we are definitely in that niche because I think there are too many players that are doing the routine testing really well. So no point one more person trying to do that.
I get it. So then I'd like to get a bit into the origin. So how did you, because since you're the founder, what was your idea when you founded this company?
So I was at Google before this. It was my first job out of college, and in about a year of being at Google, I started feeling very frustrated. I was, wanting to do something more with my time. So came home. My mother is a doctor, and I was 23. So when I came home and said, I'm feeling like I don't belong at Google, I want to do something with more impact, my mother basically laughed at me and said, go back to your work. But I think we spent a couple of months after that brainstorming. Since she was from healthcare, she knew the problems in healthcare most closely, and to be completely honest, I knew that even at 23 that I didn't know much. So it meant that I had to take help. And she introduced me to this gentleman, Dr. Ajit Singh, who's also my mentor now. And he also happened to be from healthcare, so he had spent over 20 years in Siemens. He was a venture capitalist focused in healthcare. So he, of course, also guided me towards healthcare. And between the two of them, they can be squarely blamed for why this happened and why I went in this direction.
That's really interesting. So do you have a science background?
No, I studied sociology.
Okay, wow.
So science of people, I guess.
I
but
get
most people would not call it real
science. As a
science.
fellow sociologist, I completely agree. But then I would like to ask, then how come, then, you said your mom is a doctor and your mentor is also in the healthcare business, but still it takes quite a leap to say, hey, you know what, I'm not from a science background, but I'm going to get into diagnostics. What was that final push that just made you do it?
So I think what was most interesting for me when I looked at healthcare from outside was that it is a very hierarchical industry. The whole concept of how work is done today in most other industries had not been adopted in healthcare. It's still very traditional in how, there's a doctor and then everybody else. And innovation was very limited for that reason, because I believe strongly that innovation is correlated with how much diversity you have, and it's correlated with how much transparency you have. So both of those things were sorely missing in the industry. And to me, that's what was exciting. So I often say this, that I could have been in any industry solving any problem, but what I would be passionate about is building a culture that was unique. So if you look around, we have an open working space. There's zero hierarchy, there are no offices, and those are all things that kind of I was very interested in building. And diagnostics happened to be the area because the impact of diagnostics is so large that if you're doing something interesting, you might as well do it in a space that has a large impact. But I think those elements kind of came together. I also spent about 6 months talking to clinicians. So I went as a researcher to their clinics and I said, what are the gaps? What's not working out? Help me understand. And they helped me identify this space. And so all of those things kind of came together. I said, okay, this sounds like
that's the final push. So then how does that impact your day-to-day functioning of a company? I mean, since you are the founder and you, I'm assuming you do have an active part in day-to-day operations of the company. So how does that then play out in a way where, as a non-science person, do you find yourself at odds sometimes, not understanding a lot, or are you aware of everything and you've done your research, you don't need to go to school for it?
No,
Is it
so
one of those?
I would not claim that I know everything. I
Okay.
think even if I had a science education, the kind of complex work we are doing, I don't think
Yeah.
I could know everything.
Okay.
I think the way it works is that number one, my team accepts that they are the experts in their areas, and
Yeah.
I'm the expert in bringing people together.
Okay, fair enough.
And I'm the expert in branding, and I'm the expert in being the champion for the company. So we've all kind of found our niche, and whilst I lead the organization, I look at the experts to take the decisions in the areas that they know best.
Okay.
And I honestly don't feel stupid in asking stupid questions.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's great.
yeah, and if you can say I don't know, then
Yeah.
half the battle is won.
Exactly. I think that admitting you don't know allows you then to also learn that much more because you're
Absolutely.
able to this thing. So let's talk about the company because
Yeah.
when we started, you said it is that niche, right? And
Yeah.
like you said, it's already a very crowded market
Correct.
in diagnostics. So could you talk to us a bit more about that niche, about when you say like complex diagnostics?
Yeah.
What exactly are you looking at? Like,
So, number one, the area that we are most, I would say, advanced in today is oncology or cancer.
okay.
So within cancer, there are sort of three big buckets of testing that you can do. There is actually four. There's screening, which is typically done at hospitals or at smaller setups that are there locally. So they'll screen and say, okay, yes, this looks like cancer, or most likely this is cancer.
Yeah.
Second step is diagnosing and saying, yes, this is cancer, this is the kind of cancer, this is the subtype, and this is what it really looks and means.
Yeah.
The third step is now saying, okay, now that this person has cancer, what treatment could work? So that's more the predictive part of the diagnostic.
Okay.
And finally is prognosis, to say, where will this disease head?
Yeah,
Is this
yeah.
person going to live with it? Will it be very aggressive? Will it be a manageable disease?
Okay.
So we get involved from the step 2, which is diagnosis, to prediction of what treatment will work or won't work, to prognosis, how will this disease progress? And in the prognosis piece, now the most advanced of what we are doing is actually monitoring.
Okay.
So we look at the disease over time and say, let's say X treatment was given to a patient, did it do well for the patient or not? Or is the patient progressing nevertheless?
Yeah.
Or, have they developed some resistance to that treatment? Should they look at an alternate treatment?
So then from the start of the founding of the company, was it like something that you just, I don't know, came to the realization that since it's such a crowded space in diagnostics that you always wanted to be this niche, or did it just slowly develop that way?
So to be very honest with you, the reason I stayed away from the routine and niche, from the routine testing market is because it's not just crowded, it's also pretty unethical. Okay, people don't talk about it, but there is a whole chain of who gets what incentives to give prescribe what testing.
Okay.
And I mean, maybe you can call me idealistic, but at 23, I wanted to change the world.
Completely fair,
So that was really the key reason why I stayed
Okay,
away from it.
that's interesting. So we will be right back after a short break to discuss more about Core Diagnostics.
2, 1.
Welcome back after the break to HOPStart. We're in a chat with Zoya Abrar, who is the founder of Core Diagnostics, and we're trying to get to know a little bit more about the company. So let's say I want to get a test done through you. Do I approach a private hospital? Do you have centers all over, Gurgaon, India, Delhi? What exactly is the process?
So typically a patient would not come to us directly unless they wanted, they had some family history, in which case on our website there is a way to book a consult with our genetic specialist. So we've got medical geneticists that are trained from abroad. So you can talk to one of them and they can help you figure out what you need.
Fair.
But typically a patient would go to a hospital, they would meet with a specialist, maybe a cancer doctor or a reproductive doctor, and they would then recommend what testing they need. We've got tie-ups now with all the large hospitals, 400 plus organizations work with us. So usually if you have that kind of disease, they would recommend that you come to us.
Yeah, fair enough, because like you said, you're not a general this thing.
Yeah.
So, but then in terms of making those relationships with those hospitals, especially as someone from a non-medical background, I'm sorry I keep bringing that up again and again. I just find it absolutely amazing. No, amazing in a really, really good way. So that's why I just want to ask. So how was that process? Actually going to hospital and being like, hey, you know what? There's this company. It's a very, very good niche company, I guess, who can really help you out. How did you sell that?
So the year was 2012.
Yeah.
I was obviously fresh out of Google and
Yeah.
young.
Yeah.
Most of the times when I would walk into a clinician's office, they would look at me and say, you know, where's the person we were going to meet?
Yeah,
To say no, you know, I am so and so.
Yeah.
But levity aside, I think most clinicians were very fascinated by the fact that somebody was trying to do something innovative.
Okay.
And they clearly saw the need. They clearly saw that they were traveling to conferences abroad. They knew what's happening worldwide.
Yeah.
And I think they were just waiting for somebody to come and say, hey, you know, can I solve this problem for you? So they sat up and listened. I mean, in the beginning, I think it helped that I was a woman, maybe. It helped that I was young. I was so different from the typical people knocking on their doors that they said, okay, tell us what you have to say. And then the thing we were trying to build was so different and unique. So most clinicians were very open, and I look back and think, wow, you know, we were really lucky. We just sailed through. We had no horrible people sending us away or being mean to us. I can think of one or two examples, but majority was all good and just smooth sailing.
That's great, because as an outsider, or not an outsider anymore, because of course you're completely well established. I completely understand that being the case. But then I'd like to ask you, you know, what is one of the major pain points of this industry that you feel like the industry hasn't been able to get over, or something that you've been, you know, constantly been at loggerheads with this industry?
So I think innovation, because we are so this industry has been evolving for so many years now, and there's so many people that know what they're doing, which is great from a process and financial standpoint. But from the point of view of actually doing things differently, often you need young blood. You need people that think differently, that are not constrained by, you know, aisa hi hota hai aur aisa hi hoga. So I think that's something I constantly you know, come against. Each time I hire somebody, I have to tell them, जो भी बाहर से सीख के आए हो भूल जाओ उसको. We do things differently here. And I think that's a challenge the industry faces in general as well.
I guess you're right, because I mean the healthcare landscape in India is an interesting one, because we have public, I mean, infrastructure and good public infrastructure, maybe not, I mean, because AIMS is still the go-to, but AIMS is so overcrowded all the time, and you have private hospitals that cost a bomb. So where do you see the future of, let's say, the healthcare industry in India? Is it something that should be invested more in public infrastructure, so more AIMS should come up, or more, you know, benefit should be given to private players to enter the
So
the
I think there's no one answer. Both need to be done.
Okay.
Because whilst the public infrastructure plays its role, and with all this Ayushman Bharat and all of that coming in, there's going to be a lot of work that we are all doing together, whether it's public or private. I think the answer is in collaboration. So I often give this example to at healthcare conferences. If you take the number of unoccupied beds in Delhi hospitals alone, could you guess how many there would be at this point of time?
In AIMS and stuff, or
All
like
the
in
hospitals.
all?
How many unoccupied beds would we have today?
I actually
Just
just
guess.
give a guess. 500.
10,000.
Whoa.
Yeah, and we say we are overcrowded and we are this, that, and the other. In fact, the AIMS report itself, I can't remember the exact number, but it was between 70 and 80% bed occupancy.
Wow.
Okay, and so I began thinking there has to be some gap in this process. And the gap is actually when a patient needs a bed. It may not be available in that hospital, it's available in a different hospital. So the problem is the resource. It's like what Uber did for cars. Can we do that for hospitals? Can we figure out where are the unutilized resources and make them available for a patient, maybe at a subsidized price? That's what I mean by we are not being innovative enough.
So if we're then talking about, okay, because AIMS and all is the ideal type, right? If we had like 100 AIMS, I guess we wouldn't even having this conversation. But since we don't, at that point, do you think then it's on the private players to then, you know, swallow it up and be like, hey, this is what's needed? Or is it more on the government to say, okay, no, we'll entice you with more profits? Like, how do you, I know this is a larger debate to be had, I just thought I'd get your views on
so
this.
I think the government's role definitely should be in promoting both innovation as well as, you know, giving incentives so that we pick the right initiatives, whether it's improving quality or it's, but beyond that, I think the government's role should end and does end as well. Although whenever the government tries to get involved in, you know, pricing and things like that, I think, no offense to the government, I think they do more harm than they do good. So then the main role is of the private players. I think that's where the innovation can come in, because we have enough ability to influence those things.
Fair enough. I mean, it's just, I think, then about like within those private players, like people like you who would then are more than willing to help out rather than
I'm trying.
be a little greedy. But so then I'd just like to ask you then, as someone who isn't part of this industry, something I've said constantly and constantly amazed about. But any advice for people who want to get into diagnostics who don't have a background, like how, just a bit of a inspirational story about how you did it, or I mean, if other people, because I mean, I'm sure it wasn't very easy getting this off the ground with the background that isn't in science.
So I often tell this to any young person who's asking me for this kind of advice. First of all, I say, I'm not successful yet. I'm still in my journey. So please take my advice with a pinch of salt. But beyond that, I think the one thing I can say is be open to taking risks. I mean, it's often said, and it's almost cliche what I'm saying, but reality is the difference between somebody who makes it and doesn't is that they just tried, right? If I had stayed at Google because I was scared that I'm an outsider, I would have never made it. Beyond that, just be unafraid. Like, just ask the stupid questions. Look at people and say, I don't know. People are willing to help you as long as you ask for help.
Fair enough. And where do you see then like Core Diagnostics in, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years?
So I think number one, I see us as being a spearheader, or I would say an industry game changer in terms of innovation. We've done it now for 8 years, but I think if we are able to do it for another decade, then we can really say, okay, if a company has been able to over and over again for 2 decades be innovative, then I don't think many companies in healthcare can claim that. So that's one. Second, in terms of the data we've curated now, I think we are working very strongly on building algorithms and automating what we do. And that will take time, but I think that will be again a key differentiator between what we do and other players in the industry do. And third, I think, like I said, cancer is an area we are strong in, but I see us replicating that in at least 7 to 8 other disease areas. So
okay, so then just to finally conclude this interview, because it's something I do like asking, is it harder then to get like skilled people in this job, or is it harder to find equipment that is skilled enough for this thing? Because I know downstairs, for example, there is some really heavy duty equipment that is very hard to find and is really hard to source. So which side is it?
Does anybody answer equipment?
I think some people who don't like their employees might.
I love my employees.
You love your employees.
So I think it's very clear, getting equipment is always easy. You find the right person who has the right background, they can help direct you in the right direction.
True.
We did have to import some of our stuff, so I wouldn't say it was easy, but definitely getting the right people, and more importantly retaining them and keeping them motivated, no comparison, that's tougher.
All right, thank you so much for your time. This has been absolutely delightful.
Thank you. Same here.